My son Marcus was everything I had ever hoped for in a child. From the moment he could talk, he was respectful, kind, and thoughtful in ways that stunned people. Teachers loved him, neighbors complimented him, even his little cousins looked up to him like he was some kind of superhero. Straight-A student, volunteered at school fairs, always helped his grandparents carry groceries without being asked. He never gave us any real trouble, not once. My wife, Evelyn, and I used to look at each other and say, "We must be doing something right." We spoiled him, sure. Birthday parties, the newest phone every other year, little weekend trips just because. But it never felt excessive. He always said thank you, always gave us hugs, never acted entitled. I thought we had struck the perfect balance, giving him a good life while teaching him to be good. Even my parents doted on him like he was their own golden child. My dad would brag at church, "That boy's going places, just wait and see." I believed it too. Marcus had this spark. He made you believe he'd do something special with his life. We had a routine, family dinners every Sunday, movie nights on Fridays, and long drives just to talk about life, school, anything. I knew his friends, I knew his dreams. We had a bond. I was proud, deeply proud, to be his father. Then came sophomore year. A new school year, a few new faces, and the smallest shift in attitude. At first I told myself it was normal. Teenagers change, they pull away, test limits. But something about the way Marcus changed didn't feel like growth. It felt like loss. He stopped talking as much. His smiles felt forced, and those Friday night movies turned into closed doors and muttered excuses. It was subtle, but steady, like water eroding stone. Until one day, I realized I didn't know who I was looking at anymore. It began with names I didn't recognize. Jalen, Cody, Trent, guys from the football and wrestling teams. They had reputations, loud, cocky, always on the edge of trouble. Not necessarily bad kids, but the kind of boys who looked at rules as suggestions and adults as obstacles. When Marcus started hanging out with them, I raised an eyebrow. Evelyn raised both. "We should talk to him," she said one night after dinner. I nodded, but I wasn't worried yet. Marcus had always made good choices. I figured he'd get bored of them soon enough. Instead, things got worse. His grades dropped, just a little at first. An A here, a B there. Then came the C's. He stopped volunteering, said he was too busy. And when I'd ask him where he was going or who he was texting, he'd snap, "Why do you care?" He'd never spoken to me like that before. I found myself pacing in the kitchen some nights, trying to find the line between parenting and spying. I didn't want to lose his trust. But I also didn't want to lose him. He stopped visiting his grandparents too. My mother called me concerned. "He hasn't come by in weeks. Is everything okay?" I didn't have a good answer. Just a sinking feeling that something precious was slipping through my fingers. One afternoon I drove past the school and saw Marcus out front with those boys. They were laughing about something, but the energy was off. The way he moved, the way he smirked, it was like watching someone impersonate my son. Same face, same walk, but the warmth, the light, it was gone. When I confronted him later, he rolled his eyes and said I was being dramatic, that I didn't get it. "They're my friends," he said. "You can't control who I hang out with." But that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was how much he seemed to believe that. The call came on a Tuesday night. Manager of the local movie theater. Said my son had been involved in some kind of vandalism. I thought he had the wrong number. But he didn't. Apparently Marcus and his friends had gone in during the last showing, scattered popcorn everywhere, knocked over a display, even set off the fire alarm on their way out, just for laughs. It wasn't a prank. It was destruction. And it made no sense. I picked him up from the station. He wasn't in cuffs, but he looked smug. Like the whole thing had been a joke. Like he was proud of it. We didn't talk in the car. At home I grounded him harder than I ever had before. No phone, no PlayStation, no hanging out with anyone, period. He fought back, yelling, slamming doors, calling me over-dramatic and controlling. But I stood firm. "You're not going anywhere with those boys again," I said. "They're not just a bad influence, they're poison." I wasn't alone in thinking that. I called a few of the other parents, some I'd never spoken to before, and we actually agreed enough was enough. We made a plan to keep the boys apart. They wouldn't see each other at school, after school, weekends, nothing. It felt like the right move, like we were finally stepping in as adults and drawing a line. Marcus didn't speak to me for days, just stomped around the house like a prisoner. He ignored Evelyn completely. And his grandmother, who tried to bring him some of his favorite cookies, got a cold "I'm not hungry" before he shut the door in her face. Still, I held the line. I thought if we stayed firm, if we kept showing him we cared, but wouldn't tolerate this behavior, we could pull him back. But it was already too late. He wasn't just influenced by those boys anymore. He had become one of them. That morning felt ordinary. Marcus had a doctor's appointment scheduled for just after 10. I let him sleep in a little, figuring he could go back to school afterward. He barely spoke on the drive, just stared out the window with his hoodie up, earbuds in. At the clinic, he was polite to the staff, answered the doctor's questions without attitude, even cracked a joke about flu shots being practice for wrestling season. It caught me off guard, like the old Marcus had peeked out for a second before disappearing again. After the appointment, I dropped him off at home with clear instructions. Finish your assignments. No leaving the house. I'll be home after work. He mumbled, "Okay," and walked inside. I believed him. At the office, I kept checking my phone out of habit, half expecting a call from Evelyn or the school. But nothing came through, just silence. I told myself that was good. It wasn't until a little past 4 that everything shifted. My phone rang. Marcus, voice shaking. "Dad, I need you to come, please. I messed up. Just come to the TJ Maxx parking lot, please." I felt my stomach drop. No explanation, just panic. I grabbed my keys and left without telling anyone. The drive there felt endless. When I pulled into the lot, I saw a small crowd near the entrance, a couple of police cruisers. And there, standing off to the side, arms crossed, was a man I'd never seen before. He looked calm, too calm. My son was sitting on the curb, holding his face. His friends were scattered nearby, some still arguing with officers. I rushed toward Marcus, but before I could reach him, the man stepped forward and asked, "Are you the father of the boy who thinks bullying an old woman is funny?" It didn't register at first. I looked around confused. Then he added, "Yeah, I hit him. I hit your son, because he deserved it." And suddenly everything stopped. Her name was Ms. Purley. 73 years old, worked the front end at that TJ Maxx longer than some of those boys had been alive. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. Sweet voice, silver curls, always wore those big round glasses that slid down her nose. She used to hand Marcus a piece of butterscotch candy every time we stopped by when he was younger. He'd say thank you with this big goofy grin. That day she came out holding a few hangers, just doing her job. Marcus and his friends were gathered near the entrance. Not shopping, just loitering, blocking the door and making a scene. Customers were avoiding them. One of the boys had his phone out, recording like it was a prank video. Ms. Purley didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just walked up to them slowly and said, "Boys, if you're not planning to buy anything, I'm going to have to ask you to move along, please." But they weren't listening. One of them zoomed in on her with his phone and said, "Oh, come on, Grandma, we're just enjoying the sunshine." Another added, "She's about to call the cops over nothing." Marcus joined in, laughing louder than the rest. "Relax," he said. "Nobody's getting hurt. You're ruining the fun." She didn't flinch, just reached for the walkie-talkie clipped to her apron. That's when it escalated. The boy filming slapped the walkie out of her hand. It hit the pavement with a crack. Ms. Purley stepped back, startled, still holding the hangers. Marcus moved toward her, grabbed at the clothes in her hands, maybe trying to rip them away, maybe just to provoke her. She didn't let go. In the tug, her body shifted off balance. Her foot slid on the curb. She fell backward hard, hitting the ground with a sickening thud. And they laughed. Not nervous laughter, not shocked. Real, cruel laughter. One boy leaned over her and said, "You faking now, huh? Trying to play victim for the camera?" She lay there groaning, trying to sit up. No one helped her, not even Marcus. That was the moment everything changed. I've replayed that footage in my mind more times than I can count. It wasn't just the fall, it was everything that came after it. The phone had dropped when the boy slapped the walkie-talkie, but it kept recording, angled on the pavement, half blocked by someone's shoe. The audio caught it all. Ms. Pearlie's cry of surprise, the thump of her hitting the ground, the laughter that followed like it was all part of some twisted comedy skit. One of the boys yelled, "Yo, she took a dive like in the movies." Another said, "Bet she's gonna call 911 and claim broken bones." But what haunts me most is Marcus's voice, clear, confident. He said, "She's fine, she's just mad, we're not scared of her." There was no fear in him, no guilt, just mockery. Like he saw her as some cartoon villain, not a real person who could have been seriously hurt. That's when the man showed up. You don't hear his footsteps in the video, but suddenly his voice cuts through the noise. "Did you just push that old lady?" Everything got quiet. The boys stumbled over their words, all talking at once. "No, man, she tripped. She started it. We didn't even touch her." And Marcus, sounding defensive now, added, "She grabbed at me, dude. She was wildin'." The man didn't respond right away. Then, calmly, he said, "I saw everything." No yelling, no threats. Then came the punches. 3 hits in quick succession. Thuds, grunts, shuffling feet. You hear someone shout, "What the hell, bro?" Then more hits, a scuffle, the sound of someone hitting the ground hard, a girl screaming in the background. When I arrived, Marcus had a bloody lip and a bruise swelling near his eye. 2 of the other boys were crying. One had vomited on the sidewalk. The man who'd hit them? Still standing there, arms folded, not a scratch on him. When I asked if he'd touched my son, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I sure as hell did. What kind of man are you raising?" I didn't have an answer. Marcus sat on the curb, head down, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his hoodie. Blood smeared across his face. His lip was cracked. I knelt beside him, but he didn't look at me. He just kept whispering, "He hit me. He just came up and hit us." The man stood nearby, unfazed. No apology, no hesitation. Just steady eyes and a clenched jaw. I turned to him, trying to stay calm. "You assaulted my son." He didn't blink. "No. I stopped your son from assaulting a 70-year-old woman. I watched him help knock her down and laugh in her face." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say he had no right, but my mouth wouldn't move. My hands shook. The things I was hearing, the scene around me, it didn't fit into any version of Marcus I had known. Then someone said, "The video's still recording." An employee handed me the phone that had fallen. I watched it there on the sidewalk, surrounded by police and flashing lights, watched my son mock that woman, watched him grab at her, watched him do nothing as she hit the ground. And then I heard that laughter, his laughter, cold, detached, a sound I'd never heard from him before. I looked at Marcus again, really looked. He wasn't crying. He wasn't even ashamed. He looked pissed. At me. At everyone. When the police asked for a parent, I stepped forward. One officer read the charges. Assault of an elderly person, disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace. They asked if I wanted to say anything on his behalf. I stayed silent. Marcus's eyes widened. "Dad, what are you doing? Say something. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." But it wasn't. I told the officers I understood the charges. I asked if they needed anything else from me. They put him in the back of the squad car. I watched it drive away, my reflection in the window distorted by red and blue lights, and all I could think was, how did we get here? When I got home that night, I thought maybe Evelyn would be quiet. Maybe she'd see the video. Maybe she'd understand. She didn't. She met me at the door, eyes wild, voice already shaking with fury. "Where is he? Where's Marcus?" "In holding," I said, keeping my voice level. "They'll process him tonight." "You let them take him?" she screamed. "You stood there and watched them arrest our son." I didn't respond. She followed me into the kitchen, yelling louder, "What is wrong with you? He's 16! 16! And you just stood there?" I pulled out my phone and held it up. "Watch the video," I said. She snatched it from my hand, clicked play. I watched her face tighten, then twist, then falter. For a second, I thought maybe she'd finally see what I saw. But when it ended, she looked at me like I was the villain. "He's a kid," she said, voice breaking. "He made a mistake." "Yeah," I replied. "And that mistake was hurting someone who never did anything to him." She stormed out of the room. Not long after, her sister called me, screaming into the phone that I was heartless, spineless, pathetic. said a real father would have punched the man who hit his son, no matter what he did. Even my own mother called. She sounded disappointed, quiet, almost sad. He's your boy. You defend your boy. That's what fathers do. But I couldn't. Not this time. Not after watching him become a stranger right in front of me. I sat in the living room while the voices kept flying at me. Evelyn, her sister, my mum. I didn't even hear the words after a while. It all turned to static. I stood up, walked out the back door, and locked myself in the shed. Sat on an old lawn chair. No lights, no noise, just me and the heavy, suffocating silence of everything I'd just witnessed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what being a father was supposed to mean anymore. I stayed in that shed for over an hour, maybe 2. The dark felt easier than the noise. I kept hearing their voices, even though they weren't there. Evelyn's rage, my mother's disappointment, my sister-in-law's disgust, all of them coming at me like I was the one who pushed that woman to the ground. When I finally went back inside, the house was dead silent. Evelyn was in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes red but locked on me like a sniper. She didn't say a word, neither did I. I walked past her, up the stairs, into Marcus's room. It was a mess. Sheets crumpled, clothes on the floor, old food containers by the bed. But the thing that hit me was the photo on the wall. Marcus at age 9 in his scout uniform, standing between me and Evelyn, grinning like he'd just discovered fire. I remember that day. I'd spent the morning teaching him how to tie a knot. He'd practiced for hours until he got it right. He was so proud. And now I didn't know who that kid was anymore. Back downstairs, Evelyn finally spoke. "You broke him," she said flatly. I turned, stunned. "By giving up on him, by letting him rot in a jail cell. You chose some stranger over your own son." "No," I replied, quieter than I intended. "He made that choice, when he stopped being the boy we raised." Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. "You're weak," she whispered. "I don't even know who I'm married to." I didn't answer. What was there to say? Maybe she was right. Maybe I was weak. For not swinging back, for not yelling, for just watching everything fall apart in front of me. But something deep inside me whispered that I had done what needed to be done. That maybe love wasn't just protecting your kid from pain, but letting them feel it when they cause it. Still, as I stood there, I felt completely alone. Not just in the room, but in my marriage, in my family, in my role as a father. Completely, utterly alone. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything. The silence from Marcus's room was unbearable. I kept imagining him sitting in a cold holding cell, arms folded just like that man in the parking lot. Angry, misunderstood, or maybe not misunderstood at all. Maybe understood perfectly. The next morning I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee I didn't drink, just held it for the warmth. I tried to piece it all together. Every warning I gave, every second chance, every conversation where I begged him to think, to choose differently. I went over them again and again, like maybe if I could find the right one, I could reverse everything. But I couldn't. This wasn't just about a bad decision. This was about a pattern, a path. And I'd watched him take each step while I kept hoping he'd turn around. That's what haunts me. Not just what he did, but what I didn't do soon enough. I think about that man's question. What kind of man are you raising? I still don't know how to answer. Evelyn barely speaks to me now. She checks on Marcus, calls the lawyer, updates his grandparents. But with me, nothing. Just a cold wall of silence. As if I'm the real enemy in all this. Maybe I am. Maybe I failed in every way that matters. Not because I didn't fight for him, but because somewhere along the way I stopped seeing him for who he really was becoming, and maybe he stopped seeing me as someone worth listening to. So now I sit here, asking strangers what I can't seem to ask my own family without getting shouted down. Am I the asshole? For not defending him? For not throwing a punch for my son? For letting him face the consequences? Or for realizing too late that the boy I once knew is gone, and I might not get him back?